भैया स्टार्ट करो भैया, मैं तब तक सर की पीपीटी शेयर करता हूँ भैया।
Good evening, everybody who is a part of this webinar. We are delighted to be honored actually today, and this is our great honor to welcome one of the prominent speaker of the evening, and he is Dr. Sanjeev Gimawat, who is by profession is a qualified fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Institute of Company Secretaries of India, and Institute of Cost and Works Accountants of India. By qualification, he is also the Company Secretary of UK and having the degree of LLM. So education and the nomenclature after his name is actually lesser than his personality own. So today he will deliberate upon the critical aspects on the businesses. Dr. Sanjeev Gimawat is holding the post of a director legal in Dalmia Bharat Group, and we are really honored to welcome you, sir, Dr. Sanjeev Gimawat ji. So you are welcome here on behalf of Knowledge Tree. Over to you, Sanjeev bhai.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Thanks a lot, and thank you, Nitin, and thank you, Knowledge Tree, for inviting me to share my views on these key issues and challenges for businesses in India post-COVID-19. So good afternoon, friends. Absolutely my privilege to be here and sharing my views on this contemporary topic. As we all know that never ever in the history of mankind, perhaps the known history or the history to which we are the part, we have ever seen such kind of situation, a situation which has its impact worldwide. And its impact is not only on the health related issues, but then almost all walks of life. Its impact is on economy, its impact is on day-to-day life. And I would like this, I was given to understand it's around 90 minutes of session. So in 90 minutes of session, I would be sharing my views on the overview of the whole issue, overview in terms of this very crisis, the health crisis and economic crisis. I would also touch upon the immediate actions which the government has taken in terms of the guidelines and directives which were issued in the month of March. I would also touch upon the issues that to what extent and how that impacted the business. I would also touch upon the issues and challenges surrounding this. I would thereafter be focusing on the stimulus package or the reform packages as well. I would also like to give you some pre and post COVID-19 perspectives and how the businesses would evolve post COVID-19 period, and also what are the learnings in the whole process which we have all learned, and perhaps that has made us more mature as a person, as a professional, and also what should be the way forward. So this is in the 90-minute session, I would be covering these aspects, and in the process, I would perhaps be reinforcing your views as well. And at the same time, I would be sharing my views. Perhaps that would be slightly different from the common views which are prevalent right now. So if I start with the very issue that this is a crisis. This is a crisis.
Hello, Sanjeev sir.
Yeah.
Just sorry to interrupt. Please open your video, sir. I think you have not switched on your video.
Oh, my video is on, in fact.
On, sir, नहीं on नहीं है sir. Sir, मैं नजर आ रहा हूँ और वे नजर नहीं आ रहा.
Well,
click on the screen and see the left. Your video icon must be there.
Video and it's on. In fact, it's. I am now putting it off.
ये वीडियो ऑन नहीं हुआ. भैया अपनी शक्ल दिखाओ ना ताकि पता लग जाएगा भैया.
I'm there only.
भैया फोटो का आपकी फोटो भी नजर नहीं आ रही.
I'm not able to see your face, Deepak and Mr. God.
Oh, so we are not able to see you, sir. I'm on the screen.
Sir, आप स्क्रीन में कहाँ हो? दीपक भैया आप नहीं हो?
I'm there, sir.
I am on the screen. Nitinji's photo is getting reflected. Both of your photographs are not there. Deepak and Mr. God.
Yeah. So he should be live actually. I think some technical issue is there, Nitin bhai, because
मुझे
my
आप-
video is also.
सर मुझे ना आप मुझे बोलते रहिएगा कि स्क्रीन में जब बोलेंगे मैं स्क्रीन शेयर कर लूंगा आपकी ना, मेरे पास मैंने वो खोल ली, पीपीटी खोल ली थी आप।
Okay, yeah.
To resolve this video issue.
हाँ मुझे लग रहा है भैया कुछ दिक्कत लग रही है मुझे इसके अंदर ना।
Was addressed it actually, right? Because I think viewers are sending questions that no visual is there.
और मुझे लग रहा है भैया थोड़ा सा ना, मुझे लग रहा है कि टेक्निकल इशू आ गया है। तो ये चक्कर क्या ना भैया, सुबह तो हमने किया ही, आप थे ही वहाँ पे, यू आर देयर।
Yes.
और अभी शेयरिंग भी नहीं करने वो मना कर रहा है और वो भी कर रहा है, तो फिर मैंने भैया से इसलिए मंगाई तो नहीं नहीं हो।
Technically should be exit and then relog in.
भैया वो चक्कर क्या है, यहाँ तो मैं एंड करूंगा, पर प्रॉब्लम क्या है, एक बार ट्राई
पूरा YouTube से चला जाएगा।
दीपक भैया एक बार आप करके बंद करके देख लो, आपकी खुलती है तो।
Should I switch off?
सर आप मत करो, स्टार्ट करो सर, ऑलरेडी 4:38 हो गए। लेट अस स्टार्ट द सेशन सर, सेशन स्टार्ट करो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं। तो जी भैया मुझे बता देना मेरे को कब पीपीटी शेयर करनी है आपकी, ठीक है भैया?
No, I'm fine with, अगर आप अभी शेयर कर सकते हैं, और अदरवाइज मैं अपने आईपैड से देख लेता हूँ। I think that would be better.
मैं अभी शेयर करता हूँ, मैं शेयर कर लेता हूँ, ये शेयर करता हूँ, रुको ना भैया, मैं शेयर करता हूँ। ठीक है भैया।
Am I visible now?
नहीं भैया नहीं हो पा रहा है, वो मुझे लग रहा है हमारे एंड कोई टेक्निकल इशू है और कोई बात नहीं भैया, टेक्निकल इशू है मुझे लगता है। सुबह तो हो ही रहा, सब कुछ हो ही रहा था, पता नहीं व्हाई इट इज हैपनिंग नाउ। एनीहाउ स्टार्ट करें भैया।
Yes sir, can you see that? Can you watch me?
नो भैया।
Yeah.
Go ahead. So there is a technical issue, no doubt.
तो
आप स्टार्ट करो सर, स्टार्ट करो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं।
Sure.
Yeah, good afternoon, friends. Again, to restart this, but then, in the next 90 minutes of session, I would be focusing on the key issues and challenges for businesses in India. Particularly, the focus would be on the post-COVID-19 situation. Nitin ji, am I sharing your presentation or my presentation?
सर आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन मैं शेयर कर रहा हूँ सर, आप मुझे बताते रहिएगा, मैं चेंज करता रहूंगा।
अच्छा, because मुझे आपकी presentation, I'm not able to see this, or just leave it. Let me use my presentation on my laptop then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
Nitin sir, you are also not visible. Despite the fact your video is on.
Yeah. Should I?
स्टार्ट करो भैया, स्टार्ट करो।
Sanjeev sir, you can continue, please.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So the crisis is unprecedented. This crisis is unprecedented for mainly two reasons. One is the health crisis, which was of unprecedented nature, and the other is the economic crisis. So I would be focusing on the crisis per se. I would also be focusing on the MHA guidelines, the directives issued by the government, central government, state governments, and the district administration. I would also be focusing on the impact which it has created on the businesses. The impact has been created on man, material, money, both these aspects. And the initial period was very, very challenging in terms of non-performance of obligations by multiple parties. And for the first time, I think the way in which the force majeure clause was discussed. So these were the impacts which in the first very month of pandemic, we started experiencing this, and particularly in the month of March and April. I would also be focusing on the issues and challenges. Thereafter, the stimulus packages and reform measures which the government has initiated in the recent past. I would also be focusing on the pre and post COVID-19 situation, the learnings, and the way forward as well. So this health crisis was the worst worldwide pandemic. It's not that we have not seen or experienced outbreaks in the past. We have experienced Ebola, we have experienced HIV, we have experienced SARS, TB, malaria, etc. But then their extent and extent was too limited and restricted. It was not a spread which is a worldwide spread. Today this spread is almost every continent except Antarctica, and this spread was such a sudden spread that nobody ever experienced this, and that is what the fear of the health crisis was. Today, if we talk about the India, we have over 90,000 cases. We have nearly 3,000 kind of deaths, and coupled with this kind of pandemic, we have a major issue in terms of a poor health infrastructure. As far as the worldwide scenario is concerned, I think the possible treatment is we are nowhere near that possible treatment. The researches are going on, but then the possible treatment is, I think, too far it appears. The only solution which appears to us is the contact tracing or the limited travel or quarantining of citizens or cancelling gatherings, etc. Now, these efforts and these very efforts are impacting businesses as well. But then we don't have any solution but to go for these only efforts. Then the use of mask and social distancing that has become a norm today. And as far as WHO's reports are concerned, the WHO is of the view that the coronavirus may never go away. Now, in this kind of crisis, we are looking at our economic conditions. We are looking at the impact which it has created as far as the businesses are concerned. Now, in this backdrop of economic health crisis, the economic crisis is the worst global economic crisis which we have ever suffered. The history suggests that post 1930, this is the worst economic crisis we have ever suffered, and for the simple reason that such a sudden crisis never ever happened. Even if you remember, as far as the 2008 is concerned, 2008 recession was a gradual recession. It didn't come suddenly. Before 2008, the economies of the world were at its peak. So from a peak, we have gone down as far as recession is concerned, but then in a gradual manner. But then here is a situation that this impact is so sudden and so long-lasting that it has completely created a devastating social and economic and political crisis. Now, if we take the data as far as India is concerned, India is the next year's GDP growth rate is estimated to be 2%. And as far as this 2020 and 21 is concerned, we are expecting a growth rate of perhaps 1% or perhaps lower than that also. So that situation is also not very clear right now. Now, in this backdrop, the unemployment has risen significantly. If I take the data of March and April, the unemployment level has increased up to from 6.7% to 26%. We are experiencing a daily job and income losses. There is uncertainty, in terms of return to normalcy is too severe. Now, as far as in the ILO report is concerned, out of total 330 crores kind of workforce, the nearly 80% workforce is impacted directly or indirectly, and worldwide job losses are nearly 20 crores. So you can very well imagine the kind of impact which this coronavirus has created. Now, the speed and depth of this contraction, as far as the global economy is concerned, is absolutely unprecedented, which is impacting the lives and livelihoods of people. And this is what the emergent situation today is. Now, in this kind of crisis, where we have been impacted socially, economically, and politically, we have been impacted not only from a lives part of it, we have been impacted from a livelihood part of it. And in a situation which India is facing today, with a over 4 crore kind of migrant labor, and who do not have any means of livelihood. Now, this is what has created a major havoc in the system. Now, in this backdrop, we have seen the Ministry of Home guidelines also, directions also. And so, of course, initially in the month of March, the guidelines and directions were issued. They were issued as an advisory. But then thereafter, on 29th of March order, or 29th March MHA directive, that was issued under the Disaster Management Act. And since it was issued under the Disaster Management Act, it has a enforceability and a force of law basically. And so it was no longer advisory as far as the MHA directions are concerned. And then these MHA directions were having a major impact on the businesses. So what exactly happened during that period is that in March, when this issue came up, and these advisories started coming up, offices were getting closed down, and these offices were getting closed down very, very suddenly. Now, in that backdrop, the contracts and the parties, defaulting under one pretext or the other as far as the performance of obligations are concerned. You do not have the offices to function. The factories are shut down. The employees are getting scary. Now, in this backdrop, certain directions were issued by the MHA, and one of the directions which was of a critical nature and which has again further created havoc was the payment of wages or the payment of salaries as far as workers are concerned. And there the issues came up in terms of their conflict with the labor laws. The issues came up in terms of constitutional validity of those directions, etc. And there were legal challenges to these notifications also, which are right now sub judice. But then I will just touch upon as far as these directions are concerned, and just to give you my perspective, that despite of the discussion that whether the state or the central government can issue directions of this nature which are mandatory in nature, whether no work or no pay kind of principle can be applied, whether from a doctrine of proportionality standpoint, whether these directions or these directives would stand the scrutiny of the courts, we will just have discuss that part as well. Now, I just wanted to give you a perspective as far as Disaster Management Act is concerned. Now, Disaster Management Act came into existence in 2005. And the history behind this particular legislation was that in 1990, United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution. And that resolution was of treating the 1990s decade as International Decade for Natural Disasters. Then suddenly in that particular decade and subsequently in 2001 we have experienced Gujarat earthquake. In 2004 we have experienced tsunami, and that was exactly the reason why government pushed this particular legislation and this Disaster Management Act was enacted. Now, this Disaster Management Act was enacted with a structure whereby the powers as far as the governance is concerned, or to treating the disaster is concerned, or to taking actions in terms of the mitigation of the disaster or the preparedness level for the disaster is concerned, that all powers were with the national authority. So this is how this whole act has been structured. Now, the people, of course, when these directives came into existence, people challenged these very directives, and people were critical about these directives. But then I just want to give you a perspective here that, to my understanding, from a constitutional validity standpoint, these directives are within the framework of the Constitution. And let me give you my reasons why I say so. Now, if suppose this is a disaster, and if this disaster has created a disturbance of the highest order as far as the nation is concerned, so it's nothing but an internal disturbance of a nature whereby collectively as a nation, the steps are required to be taken. And this is what this particular legislation addresses the situation. This legislation gives ample powers to the central government in terms of passing of directions, which the state governments will have to follow, or the directions of the state government would have to be followed by the district administration. So basically, it's a three-tier structure. Now, strangely, as far as the internal disturbance is concerned, the reference of the very term internal disturbance used to be there in Article 352. Now, Article 352 was the emergency provisions. Under the emergency provisions, before the 44th Amendment of the Constitution, Article 352, which used to give powers as far as the central government is concerned in terms of imposing the emergency, that was having the three basic ingredients in terms of declaration of emergency. And the three ingredients were that if there's a war kind of situation, or there's an external aggression, or there is an internal disturbance. But then after the 44th Amendment, this word internal disturbance has been deleted. And instead of internal disturbance, the new concept has been added, which was armed rebellion. So basically, the actions which the central government can take in an emergent situation under Article 352, which was not available post 44th Amendment. So where would you go as far as these kind of internal disturbances are concerned, under which provisions of the Constitution you would exercise those powers? Now, for this particular reference, and let me again give you a perspective here, that the word disaster is nowhere provided under the Constitution. So in a disaster-like situation is not provided under the Constitution, but then interestingly, there's an Article 355. Now, Article 355 has a term internal disturbance, where the Constitution provides or empowers the Union to enact laws or to protect states against all internal disturbance. So the internal disturbance is already there as far as Article 355 is concerned. Then we have Article 256 also. The 256 gives central government enough powers in terms of issuing directions, how to implement the laws made by the parliament. So, and Article 257 provides states the powers or an obligation on the states to follow the directions of the central government, or in a way not prejudice any of the executive power of the center. So these powers are also provided under 257. Now, this is what the constitutional background is. And as far as when this particular legislation was enacted in 2005, so this was exercised under the residuary powers of the central, which is Article 248, and the entry 23 of the content list was used. Now, entry 23 is a social security legislation. It's a social security kind of areas, or the employment or unemployment related issues can be covered under entry 23. So when the parliament has passed this particular legislation, it's within the complete constitutional framework. This has been passed under the concurrent list under entry 23, and since it's a social security kind of entry, so the directions or the guidelines or the advisories which are issued under the Disaster Management Act, to my understanding, they are perfectly valid and within the framework of the Constitution. Of course, we will have to see how since the matters are pending before the Supreme Court, how the Supreme Court takes the view as far as whole issue is concerned. But the basic challenge as far as the Supreme Court is concerned is mainly, and that is what the parties are arguing, and the parties which are arguing is that under Article 265, you cannot impose taxes, because taxes can only be imposed by the authority of law. Or they are arguing that under Article 300A, you cannot deprive a person of its property without the authority of law. So basically, when the directions were issued that the employers will have to pay wages or salary to their workers, now that direction cannot be issued. This is what the contention is, because that is against Article 265 and against Article 300A. But then the argument here is that neither this is a tax, neither this is depriving a person of a property. It is this particular directions, they are under the social security kind of framework. This legislation is a social security legislation, which legislation has been enacted within the purview of the Constitution of India, and it has a force of law. So I think the directions of payment of salary or wages to workers are concerned, that is a perfectly valid kind of thing, directions. Now, if I talk about the whole issue, how the directions have been issued or advisories have been issued under this particular legislation, then we would certainly agree that COVID-19 was an internal disturbance. Now, nobody can deny that. This is an internal disturbance. It's a disturbance whereby the nation collectively will have to take action. So under which law you will be taking action? So this is the legislation under which you would be taking this action. It's a top-down approach as far as the whole enactment is concerned. It's a three-tier structure where there's a national level, a state level, and district level. And the national authority issues directions or advisories or guidelines which the states will have to follow. And similarly, the down below the state, which is district administration, they will have to follow. So the directions have been issued under Section 6. Directions have been issued under Section 10. And the guidelines were issued by the National Executive Committee. Now, the exact words I just want to read out these particular words, which is all the employers, be it in the industry or in the shops and commercial establishments, shall make payment of wages of their workers at their workplaces on the due date without any deduction for the period their establishments are under closure during lockdown. So now, if you notice that perhaps intentionally the government was very cautious about choosing of those words. They have not chosen the words in terms of how you would be defining the word wages. They have not chosen the words how you would be defining the workers. But then what they have chosen is that this would be applicable to all employers. But then which all employers? Which are in the industry, which are the shops and commercial establishment. So either you should be an industry or registered under the Factories Act, or you should be registered under the Shops and Commercial Establishment Act, and those establishments which are under closure during lockdown. So this particular guidelines would only be applicable when the establishments are under closure during lockdown. And if those are under closure during lockdown, then it's an obligation on the employer to pay wages and salary to their workers. So this is how the enactment has been made. Now, initially when this issue came up and there was a hue and cry as far as industry is concerned, and people were having one or the other conferences and discussions and seeking legal advice, etc. What would happen if we don't do this? Now, you just need to understand the perspective why this particular thing came into existence. And in an emergent kind of situation where you have a 4 crores kind of people scattered in almost all states, if you have a condition where all those workers would be going to their respective state, they would be spreading the disease. Now, that is exactly the reason why this particular directions were issued under Disaster Management Act, and where there is a punishment prescribed under Section 51 that if you don't comply with those directions, then you would be subjected to the penal consequences. But the interesting thing is, and people talked about this, that what would happen to those very entities who can't pay? The organizations which are earning on a daily basis and they don't have resources to pay. So what would happen to those kind of entities? And the answer to that is that, and which has been noticed also, the organizations or entities, if they are seeking the requisite authorization or requisite approval from the district administration or the state, they can always be given exemption. For example, Section 51, which clearly talks that without reasonable cause, you cannot refuse to comply. But then if you have a reasonable cause, if you can demonstrate through your balance sheet that you don't have funds to pay, or you can demonstrate through your bank accounts, then nobody can force you to pay certain amount to certain person while you don't have funds. But then you need to certainly demonstrate this, and you need to have a reasonable cause as far as that situation is concerned. And the interesting part is that largely the organizations will have to comply with this because of the simple reason, two more aspects. One is this particular legislation, Section 72, is very clear. It says that it has an overriding effect as far as all legislations are concerned. So people, of course, talked about these aspects also, that what would happen if the people are not coming for work? Why should we be paying them? Now, in a situation like this, and this happened also in most of those industries which are basically the essential commodities kind of industry, where you ask employees or workers to come for the job, and they were allowed as far as the government is concerned because those were essential commodities. If they don't come, then obviously you have all the rights under the labor laws. So the interesting thing is, while those directions were issued under the Disaster Management Act, while Section 72 has an overriding effect, but at the same time, please note that the labor laws have not been suspended. So you have all the rights as far as labor laws are concerned, and you can exercise those very rights on this. One more aspect which I wanted to highlight here, that non-compliance of these directions would lead to a severe kind of action. As far as the companies are concerned, the way in which the Section 58 is structured, it has been structured as a strict liability, as absolute liability, as well as vicarious liability. Now, after discussing these MHA guidelines, Now, what has been the impact? What exactly happened? What has been the impact on the businesses? So the major issues and challenges which has impacted the business are mainly three aspects. In all these three aspects, there was a major impact, and those three aspects were the man, material, and money. As far as man is concerned, there was a severe workforce crunch. There was a complete fear psychosis because the plants were shut down, offices were closed down, and people were moving to their villages and towns. So those people were not available. So there was a severe workforce crunch as far as the major impact is concerned, particularly in view of the migrant labor and also in terms of the movement of people. Even those industries which were working during the lockdown, they also face the problem because under one pretext or the other, logistics and transportation kind of arrangement, they were requiring people and the people were not available. Now, the other aspect which has also severely impacted the businesses is the material part. And material, when I say material is basically the complete supply chain disruption which it has caused. This supply chain disruption has impacted the whole demand and supply situation in the market. The supply chain also, not only from a domestic supply standpoint, but also the global supply. So in all those kinds of industries where you were dependent on imports, they all got impacted. Particularly the imports which were to come from jurisdictions like China, they were severely impacted. And of course, because of the lockdown, because of so much havoc, there was a reduced consumer activity, and this whole vicious cycle was of such a fashion that ultimately it has impacted the already difficult, liquidity situation which we were experiencing for the last few years. So the third aspect was the money. It was an extreme liquidity crunch for the simple reason that yes, even before the lockdown, also the resources were the major issues. There was as far as the government exchequer is concerned, it was already under so much stress because the reduced kind of government income, before COVID as well. Because of the lockdown kind of situation, the MSME sector has severely impacted. MSME sector, if I just give a figures kind of quote, that MSME sector with the nearly 7.5 crores kind of entities, it has a debt of nearly 70 lakhs crore. Now this 70 lakhs crore debt, and out of this 70 lakhs crore debt, nearly 85% is the self-financing where the MSME sector or those entrepreneurs seek loans or advances from their own sources or friends or relatives or known people. Now everything got impacted, and that has a very, very bad effect as far as the whole liquidity is concerned. Besides the banking sector, issues in terms of already difficult situation because of so many defaults in the last few years, and the IBC kind of situation whereby most of the defaulters were already before the NCLT under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So in this backdrop, even the working capital arrangements were becoming very difficult because difficult to make recoveries during this period. So from all these three aspects, man, material, and money, the businesses got majorly impacted, and those were the very challenges as well. Now, if I talk about generally how the impact has been as far as businesses are concerned globally and from an India standpoint, you can very well understand that the lockdown alone has an impact as far as the global economic cost is concerned is of nearly $6.5 trillion kind of impact. And this number might increase. To what extent the lockdown continues, I think this number might increase further. As far as India is concerned, India with the 2.8 trillion kind of economy, and where during this period the economy was around 25% economy was functional. So we used to have, and we are incurring a daily loss of around 32,000 crore kind of daily loss, or a $4.5 billion of daily loss. So this is what the impact has been as far as overall situation is concerned. If you think about the core sectors, the core sector, which is basically the 8 core industries, which are basically coal and steel and cement and these kind of minerals and these kind of industries, all industries were at negative growth. all industries were at negative growth in the very first month. The data suggests that overall industry negative growth was minus 6.5%. If I talk about the cement industry was negative growth of nearly 25%. So this is what the situation has been, and the immediate impact as far as COVID is concerned on the impact of on the businesses. Now, the GDP growth is the decade's lowest. All sectors have been impacted. Some sectors have been impacted, very seriously. Some not very seriously. For example, if I talk about the hospitality sector or the aviation sector, they are completely closed down. And if this continues for some more time, perhaps all those companies were under insolvency and bankruptcy. But then certain sectors, for example, which are basically of the essential commodities and the pharma companies, etc., they continued. But then, as far as if you ask me whether the impact was there, the impact was obviously there even in those industries, because there was a severe workforce crunch, and there was a severe supply chain disruption in those sectors, and there was a severe liquidity problem in those sectors. So those sectors also got impacted seriously. As far as the unemployment is concerned, we are at the highest level of unemployment today, nearly 26% from around, I think, 8% to nearly 26%. And businesses today, they are absolutely low on confidence. There's a huge amount of fear psychosis as far as the business, the overall business situation is concerned, because the future is appearing too uncertain. Now, in this backdrop, if you notice how this has impacted as far as and particularly on these three parameters, which is man, material, and money. So the workforce disruption is of unprecedented nature as far as the employees or workers are concerned. Now, I just take the example of MSME sector. Now, if the MSME sector gives employment to around 12 crore people. Now, during this lockdown of 2 months, nearly 40% entities or more than 40% entities are under closure. So essentially, it means that to that extent, there is an unemployment which is caused because only from the MSME sector. As far as the interested migrant workers are concerned, now, if you notice the data, all these migrant workers, out of around, say, 56 million, which is of 2011 census, which is from 2020 kind of situation, it must be much more than that. But then, if I take only that data, then in urban areas there are nearly 40 million people. Now, out of those 40 million people, 34 million people are in the informal sector. They are without job. They don't have any mechanism of earning money, no means of livelihood. And then there's a huge migrant issue because of the multiple reasons, not only because of the closing down of operations, but then also perhaps they have not been taken care of properly by the administration at the grassroots level. And of course, it also reflects a very, very poor kind of transport infrastructure, because they have not been provided those kind of infrastructure so that they can at least peacefully reach their homes or the stage. If I talk about the money part, the unprecedented liquidity crunch, of course, as we are all aware, the revenues have been severely impacted because the operations were on hold. All organizations, even if there are valid and due payments, they were all hoarding cash, they are all conserving cash. And so in a way, the movement of cash was almost stopped. Now, the very reason why conservation of cash was needed is that the demand and supply disruption was so huge, and it is such a vicious cycle that you don't have any certainty that how the everything would come up post lockdown or post COVID-19 situation. Now, in a situation like this, the consumer activities were at its lowest, or they were almost stopped, kind of thing. Recoveries were not happening because people were conserving cash, Working capital arrangements were not there, and so there was a huge demand-supply disruption, of course, coupled with those supply chain disruption also, and it was a vicious cycle. It was a vicious cycle. So if you can't address one, and automatically the other cannot be addressed. So this is that kind of situation. Supply chain disruption, we have already discussed on this, and the major reason, of course, was also the logistics and transportation issues. Because of the lockdown, even certain supplies were not in a position to make. The imports were completely disrupted because the airports and the shipping arrangements were not happening, and again, economic activities were at its standstill. And in a situation like this, on all these counts, the businesses were impacted. The other one major issue which the businesses has experienced today, and perhaps the consequences and outcome of this impact we will be seeing in the future, in terms of perhaps probable litigations and arbitration, is a force majeure clause. I have never seen that one particular clause getting discussed and deliberated so extensively by almost all people, whether legal people or non-legal people. Everybody talked about force majeure clause in their own way, and in their own way they interpreted this particular clause. Now, just to give a perspective, force majeure, as we all know, it's a situation whereby certain impossible things, certain events are happening, which are basically natural disasters or act of God or pandemics or war, these kind of situation where performance by a party would be excused. Now, normally force majeure kind of situation is provided under the contractual arrangement. So this is what the law today, as far as India is concerned, and since we also follow the common law, so these kind of situations are provided under your contractual arrangements. Now, if you have not provided under the contractual arrangement, the only remedy which is available to you is under Section 56. And Section 56 talks about those kind of situations where it's impossible to perform the contract, and if you invoke Section 56, so largely the contract becomes void. So this is what the force majeure situation is. But then I'm sure that in the times to come, the way in which the defaults happen, in the times to come, the way in which the performance have been delayed or interrupted or cancelled by various parties, perhaps some of those issues might go for litigation and arbitration, and to that extent, I think lawyers would be happy in terms of more and more work because of COVID-19. But then, as far as the businesses are concerned, they have been severely impacted because of this force majeure kind of situation, and the legal issues also involving that.
Sanjeev ji, question है राकेश कुमार जी का.
हाँ जी.
He talk about what about those who are not covered under Factories Act and under Commercial Establishment, Shop and Establishment Act? उनके साथ क्या होगा? Okay, so now just to answer this, as far as the law is very clear, law says industry and shops and establishment. It also uses the word workers. Now, which definition you would be taking as far as defining these particular concepts? Now, the definition you would be taking is the widest definition which is possible. So, for example, the Payment of Wages Act. Now, the Payment of Wages Act provides the definition of wages in a very, very broader framework. So, why it says so? Because it includes salary as well. So, the concept which is there as far as this particular clause is concerned, it says all the employers, be it in the industry or in the shops and establishment, and they need to pay what? They need to pay wages. So they are not using the word salary. But then since you import the definition of wages from the Payment of Wages Act, which includes salary, and this definition is also there as far as the Contract Labour Regulation Act are concerned, or the Minimum Wages Act is concerned, or the Industrial Employment Standing Orders are concerned. So basically, the concept of wages would be there, and that widest definition would be covered. Now, the other aspect is that whether you would be, which category of employees you would be using. So this particular sentence is also very clear because it doesn't use the word employees. It uses the word workers. Now, the workers, by very definition, would be
would be the workers which are within that below a particular threshold. So this is how this definition has been captured, and which is, again, here you would be taking the widest definition, and that widest definition is under the Industrial Disputes Act, or under the Contract Labor Regulation Act, or the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, which has the widest definition. So what is excluded as far as workers are concerned, it says, and if you take that widest definition, it says the managerial personnel would be excluded, or it would say that the supervisory people, or the people who are in the administration and who are above a particular threshold, say that is, say, 10,000 rupees, they would be excluded. So all other people would be covered under this. So if I've answered this very particular question, if you just dissect these very terms which are used under this clause, it would be very clear that all those workmen, all those workers which are part of an industry, and if they are part of the industry, means they are under the Factories Act or the Industrial Disputes Act, or they are part of the Shops and Establishment Act, so they would be covered. And all those it is saying all the employers, be it in the industry, in the Shops and Establishment Act, so they have deliberately not used the word informal sector, number one. Number two, they're also saying that you would not direct the payment, but then for what? For which period? They're very specific. They say that during the lockdown. So if the closure is because of the lockdown, and because of the lockdown, the people are not coming, then you better pay them. But in a situation where either lockdown is not there, or in a situation where under the law, because you are dealing in essential commodities, you need to run your factories or premises, then an employee cannot take a stand that that he would be sitting at home and you would be forced to pay wages. This is not the case. I hope I answered this, and I'm ready in terms of a follow-up question as well. Can I move forward?
आगे बढ़े सर, आगे बढ़े.
Yeah. Okay. So now in this backdrop, stimulus packages were announced. And if you notice, the stimulus package, it's not only India which has announced the stimulus package. The stimulus packages were announced by almost all countries. And as far as the data goes, I think from a top 5 countries standpoint, the maximum part is the contribution which has been made is by Japan, is at around 21% of the GDP. USA is around 13% of the GDP. Australia and Germany perhaps almost at the same level, 11% of the GDP, and India is 10% of the GDP. The only difference here is that in USA, for example, they have contributed in a stimulus package 13% of GDP, which is $2.7 trillion. And our economy's size is $2.7 trillion. So that is what the difference is. But then as far as the overall amount is concerned, of course, we are at 20 lakh crores and around $265 billion of stimulus package, which the government has announced. Now, so before we get into the stimulus package, the detailing of the stimulus package, we need to understand that whether there was any option, but to announce the stimulus package. The difficulty here is, because of the lockdown worldwide, not only India, worldwide, there was economic activities were freezed. Now, in a situation like this, the countries were not having option because of the such a serious kind of impact on the economic front. There was no option but to announce the stimulus package. Now, if you see the worldwide scenario, particularly in the Europe and US, where the COVID cases were too high. Also, in Europe and US, the lockdown was not that severe as we had as far as India is concerned. Despite that, they have reopened their economy. They have the complete revival strategy, and and they have announced almost all kinds of benefits as far as industries are concerned. Now, as far as India is concerned, of course, we have also announced, and almost I think the government has taken an absolutely right step that under the stimulus package they have initiated some of the great reform measures as well, and we'll come to that aspect as well. Now, the whole strategy of this stimulus package is, it's a strategy to help revive the supply by making working capital available at low interest rates. So this is what the main agenda as far as the stimulus package is concerned, that you make working capital available at the low interest rate, and in a way then revive the production. The workforce should be gainfully employed, and which should create demand. So this is how the stimulus package has been announced. So one is from a banking and funding and financing part of it, and the other is to give benefits and stimulus to all that sectors which would or which could create demand. So basically, if you notice the stimulus package, which is basically from a, not only the agricultural part of it, but then also the workers part of it, or the migrant workers part of it, and as well as a very, very serious thoughts as far as the MSME sector is concerned, and a huge benefits as far as MSME sector is concerned, and which is what the base is, that you create demand through these kinds of stimulus and make available the working capital, and automatically this vicious cycle would result into a virtuous cycle, and automatically the economic growth would happen. Now, as far as the objectives are concerned of the stimulus package, I think the Prime Minister has very rightly chosen his words. So he calls for the self-reliant India movement. He talks about the 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat when he says economy, infrastructure, system, vibrant demography, and demand. So these were the basic pillars on which the stimulus packages have been announced. The package was mainly to cater to various sections, which is basically MSME, workforce, middle class, industries, cottage industry. So he has taken complete care of that part as well. And of course, in the back of the mind, perhaps, is the creation of more demand, and also largely to make India as a self-reliant country, and perhaps rightly so, and because we have already seen, experienced under this pandemic also, that supply chain disruption may result into a severe problem, and this is why the objective of a self-reliant India movement, that in the future also, in the times to come also, we should not be facing these kind of problem. And so that statement, those are very, very attractive when he says that you become vocal for our local products and make them global. So I think that summarizes the action plan as far as the government is concerned. Now, if you notice, the stimulus packages are concerned, of course, in the 4-5 stages, and around 20 lakhs crores. So I'm not getting into the exact those figures, etc., which we all are aware. I will just go to the broad parameters of the stimulus package, which attracted me in terms of the economic growth, in terms of the impact on the businesses. So I am not focusing right now in terms of what kind of benefits given to agriculturalists or workforce, or those kind of incentive kind of benefits. I am mainly focusing right now in terms of which would impact the businesses and the long-term economic growth of the nation. So as far as this the prediction for 2020-21 is concerned, the GDP growth is estimated to be 1%. We don't know. It might go down as well, depending upon the situation. But then I think this would be the lowest ever kind of GDP growth which we have seen in the recent past. Now, in this backdrop, because last few years, from a GDP growth standpoint, we were not performing well. Even in 2019-20, our GDP growth was around 5%. Now, in this backdrop, these reform measures or stimulus package was announced. Now, with the slow economic growth in the last few years, we were even otherwise having very, very limited resources for economic growth. Our tax collection was too bad. The banking sector was under tremendous stress because of so much defaults and the economic downturn. And the MSME sector was even otherwise badly affected for last few years because of slowdown, demonetization, GST. Now, coupled with this, in this backdrop, this pandemic came, which has badly hit the demand and supply situation, which has completely disrupted the supply chain and the severe reduction as far as the consumption is concerned. Now, in this backdrop, if you analyze the stimulus package, the areas which attracted me the most, I think, and I have highlighted those, that the the free collateral free automatic loans for business and MSME sector. Now, I think this 3 lakhs crore, I think it's a very, very good initiative. And for the simple reason that, as I mentioned earlier, that MSME sector, out of 7.5 crores kind of entities, 40% entities are already under closure because of the lockdown. And even in this sector of 7.5 crores entities, as I said, that 70 lakhs crore, that is already existing. In a situation like this, to initiate or start or restart the MSME enterprises, I think that this is the right thing to do in terms of guaranteeing the loans as far as the MSME sector is concerned. Now, and also similarly, the sector-specific subordinate debt for MSME sector, 20,000 crores, then equity infusion through MSME fund of fund, 50,000 crores. So these are all initiatives which are very, very attractive in terms of reigniting or reinitiating this sector, and to help this particular sector to again revive. Let's not forget the fact that this particular sector is the base as far as the economy is concerned. This particular sector contributes nearly 35% of GDP. Now, 35% of GDP with 12 crores kind of population's employment, I think all these initiatives would greatly benefit as far as the whole sector is concerned, and it would help in terms of reviving of the economy. Then some of the other initiatives which were announced under the stimulus package, which also attracted me, is in terms of relief to contractors and real estate projects under the RERA. Now, I will just go to these particular aspects as well. But then I think one more important thing which attracted me is the revised classification as far as MSME sector is concerned, and which is basically increasing the limits of investments and the annual turnover for all these 3 sectors: micro, small, and medium enterprises, and also clubbing the limits as far as the manufacturing and service enterprises are concerned. Now, why I am focusing on this particular aspect, that this is one sector which needs a great amount of services as far as professionals are concerned. This is one sector which needs, services of chartered accountants, lawyers, company secretaries, cost and works accountants. But the problem here is that this sector is not able to get those kind of services. But then this sector can very well provide you a volume business. And as a professional, we need to think about how to contribute as far as this sector is concerned, and in the process, of course, earn also more revenue as professionals as well. So that is the reason why I just wanted to focus as far as this MSME sector's new limits are concerned, and I think that it's a very, very welcome step. I would also focus as far as the contractors are concerned, because of the one reason or the other, all those projects which were under the central government's charge, or with the central agencies, whether that be public works department, or these railways, or various other central government agencies. Now there, from a completion of the project's standpoint, automatic extension has been granted up to 6 months. So it's a major boost as far as the contractors are concerned. This would also apply because in all PPP projects where the strict timelines are there, I think this particular relief would benefit all those contractors as well. So it's a very welcome step. Now even in the case of one more thing which attracted me is the government agencies to partially release bank guarantees to the extent contracts are partially completed to ease the cash flows. And I think this is where the government's whole thought process is to create liquidity in the market to the extent possible, and to use all means whatever are possible. And going into these kind of minute detailing in terms of releasing the bank guarantees for the completed projects, etc., I think it's a very, very not only a wise step, but then also the concern which the government has shown as far as the whole sector is concerned. Similarly, as far as the real estate projects are concerned, I think this is also a welcome step in terms of automatic extension, and considering COVID-19 as event of force majeure. I think it's also boost as far as already dying sector as far as real estate is concerned. Now I think it would also help in terms of de-stressing the real estate developers and help in terms of completion of projects. Now coupled with, of course, more liquidity which government has tried to give through various other stimulus packages as well. Now, the new things which yesterday the government has announced, which are basically the structural reforms, and I think that under the stimulus package they have initiated some of the superb reform measures and structural reforms measures, which perhaps government was waiting to announce. Perhaps that was this is the right time in terms of announcing that under one pretext or the other, because all critical sectors have been touched as far as these structural reforms are concerned, whether that be coals, mineral, defense, aerospace, social infrastructure projects, power distribution, space, atomic energy. All sectors, all critical sectors have been touched. First time, the commercial mining has been allowed. I think it's a very welcome step. From a monopoly of the PSUs, you are shifting into a commercial mining. Then, the concept of captive mining and non-captive mining has been done away with. So basically, then you have all the rights in terms of transfer of mines. So where earlier there used to be restriction and you used to pay the transfer charges as far as captive mines are concerned, I think it's also a great relief. At the same time, auctioning of around 500 blocks also, I think very, very welcome step. Then on the manufacturing side, and it goes very well as far as the Make in India initiative is concerned. Increasing the limit as far as the automatic route is concerned for the defense sector from 49% to 74%. I think very welcome step. And then the as far as the social infrastructure is concerned, the encouragement as far as private investments are concerned. So these are also great structural reforms which the government has initiated. I think it would pave way as far as the overall economic growth is concerned. I think this would also be a base as far as a main objective of making India a $5 trillion economy. The objective which we have set for ourselves in terms of $5 trillion economy by 2025. I think these all steps were even otherwise required in terms of achieving that number. Now, in this backdrop, we need to understand that whether we can achieve that kind of economic growth. And as professionals, it's all applicable to all of us. And I think directly or indirectly, we can create those public opinions as well in terms of how to go about the whole issue. In some of those slides, I just wanted to highlight now that pre-COVID-19 or post-COVID-19, certain things which we should address in terms of our systemic and structural reforms. I think those are very relevant. Now, the fact is, last few years slowdown was all pervasive in almost all sectors. Our business climate is not conducive. Now, nobody is interested in investing in India today for the simple reason that there are multiple structural issues or the systemic issues in terms of attracting investment in India. Now, if you notice, last few years we have already experienced the as far as the infrastructure part is concerned, the project delays or execution of projects, it's a major problem. It's a major problem as our public-private partnership model has miserably failed. Now, in a public-private partnership kind of model, government becomes a party, but then government becomes more like a monitor rather than a partner. The project delays are the norms. Then we have a major issue as far as all public projects are concerned. One or the other frivolous or vexatious litigation, that is a culture, and they get entertained also, whether under the public interest litigation or otherwise, and largely they are all personal vendetta of people. Then as far as the court proceedings are concerned, in all those projects, the interim stay as far as the projects are concerned, rather than there being exception, they are the norms. So almost all critical projects, you will find one or the other frivolous litigations gets filed, and there are one or the other stays, and the projects gets delayed. Ultimately, who gets benefited? Perhaps no one, because state exchequer is not in a position to earn revenue. The people are not getting their properties on time. The businesses are impacting because the properties are not developed. So one or the other, orders get passed, and they completely delay the whole project execution. And particularly if that happens as far as the infrastructure sector is concerned, which is the backbone of the economic growth, I think it's a serious issue and that needs to be addressed. Now, in this backdrop, I just wanted to draw your line, and whether this is, again, it's nothing to do with the post-COVID situation or pre-COVID situation. These are structural issues which are relevant in almost all points of time, and we need to be addressing that if we want to address the situation as far as post-COVID-19 situation is concerned, which would be more severe and more stressful. And that reminds me that what the Prime Minister has said as far as 15th August 2019 is concerned in his statement on the Independence Day, that we need to respect wealth creators. Now, he used those very words, very few words, but then very, very strong words, that there is no respect as far as entrepreneurs are concerned as in India. And that respect is, I'm not talking about the higher bureaucracy, but then bureaucracy, the government system, almost all levels in all fossil areas, from a capital cities to the lowest villages and towns. And that respect is not there. And because of that respect, ultimately those entrepreneurs and businesses are not being treated properly. And that creates a completely negative kind of sentiments, and which gets into the delays. Now, this particular part needs to be addressed. This can be addressed through training, through knowledge sharing, or some other mechanism, so that the bureaucracy in the system should realize that entrepreneurs and businesses, they are also the part of the nation building. In COVID-19 situation, we have already experienced that without businesses, what would happen as far as nation is concerned? There's a huge labor force without livelihood. We have already seen that these businesses need to be respected, because unless and until they sustain and survive and they progress, the economy cannot progress. And if the economy cannot progress, then it would have a very, very negative impact as far as the whole workforce or the social and economic conditions are concerned. Also the certain structural reforms are needed in terms of the economic impact of the judicial orders, because at times the orders gets passed and which have a long-lasting impact. For example, Mr. Salve a few months back also spoke on that, whether that be a 2G scam related issues or the coal auction related issues, and he said in so many words, without mincing words, that ultimately these kind of decisions have led to a serious blow to the economy. It's a recession in the economy because of those very judgments. In fact, Mr. Rodgi also, I think a couple of days or perhaps yesterday, he also spoke on the similar issues, that these economic impact of the judicial orders need to be examined, and the judiciary also need to be quite vigilant and diligent, that their orders may have a long-lasting impact as far as economy is concerned. Then we have some structural issues which we need to address and we should address, is as far as the commercial disputes are concerned, still we are lacking the infrastructure as far as the expeditious resolution is concerned. Whether that be litigation or arbitration, we are in a very, very bad situation as far as the timelines and costs are concerned in terms of resolution of disputes. Also, one more aspect which I wanted to touch upon is the enforcement of contracts. And I think, there also the certain, serious steps are required. Why I say so, that if you notice that as far as the ease of doing business is concerned, we have performed exceedingly well. We have performed exceedingly well in terms of, today perhaps we are at 61 or 63rd rank from the earlier 163 rank. Or a 174 rank of 2014, I think. But then, despite of the best of the ranks as far as ease of doing business is concerned, in enforcement of contracts, we are still at around 160 or 161. So we have not improved, not at all improved as far as enforcement of contracts are concerned. And that is what the worry as far as businesses are concerned. The businesses are not in a position to enforce their contracts. And I think one major reason is that the respect for contract or respect for performance of contract is not there amongst parties. And why that is not there? Because Indian courts also at times they don't respect contracts because they go by equity. Even I have noticed in arbitration kind of matters where the courts or the arbitral tribunal need to go through the terms of the contract. They go by equity, while the arbitration law doesn't allow that. Now, in a situation like this, where the judiciary is so socially, socialistic minded and passes orders on equity, and they don't go by the terms of the contract, I think the parties also take chances. They also take chances in terms of interpreting the contracts in their own way, and that is the reason why there's no respect for contract, and ultimately this all goes to the level of the enforcement of contract, and that is the reason why investors are apprehensive in terms of investing in in various sectors as far as industry is concerned. Now, I also would like to since we are talking about those structural reforms, and these structural reforms are pre-COVID-19 or post-COVID-19, these are relevant always, and these are relevant always also as professionals, because we are dealing with almost all these kinds of issues. So I just wanted to highlight here that where are we heading? With that objective of $5 trillion economy by 2025, we all know that infrastructure is the key to the growth. Now, you cannot allow lack of infrastructure to be a binding constant as far as economic growth is concerned. You need to have the infrastructure in place, and you need to have that infrastructure investment step up. For this infrastructure to achieve that $5 trillion economy, you need to invest on the infrastructure. And for investing in infrastructure, you need to have that systemic changes made as far as the overall system is concerned, whether that is a support from bureaucracy or judiciary or enforcement of contract. These are all keys. Unless you do those structural changes, you cannot attract investment. Now, think about it, that even to achieve that $5 trillion economy, the national infrastructure pipeline in that economic survey of this year's economic survey, they highlighted that between 2020 to 25, we need to invest around $1.4 trillion in infrastructure, which is basically 100 lakh crore. Now, this 100 lakh crore amount needs to be spent by the central government, state government, 39% each, and that 22% by the private sector. Now, tell me, in this scenario, who would be bringing this amount? Central exchequer or state exchequer has no money. Of course, particularly after COVID-19, it's a serious situation. Private sector was already under difficulty in the last few years, from where they would be bringing that 22,000 lakh crores. It's very difficult. Now, and that infrastructure would be needing what? Infrastructure would be needing only two things. One is funding, and the other is modern technology. Now, to bring these two things, funding and modern technology, you need to have structural changes in place so that you can attract foreign investment, because ultimately this funding and modern technology would have to come from outside. And so you need to make those governance structure changes or systematic changes made, and which is basically a mindset change as far as bureaucracy is concerned, whereby bureaucracy and the government officials, they need to understand and appreciate that businesses would ultimately be helping nation to have that level of economic growth, and all would be surviving, and the livelihood would be dependent on those businesses. Now, today the situation is, the mindset is that an officer would be thinking that profit motive itself is bad, profit making itself is bad, and if you are making profit, why are you making profit? You better share it with the government. Now, this approach cannot continue if you want to encourage investment or enhance investment or attract investment. This mindset cannot continue. So I think a severe kind of thought should be given in terms of change of mindset as far as the bureaucracy or the governance structure is concerned. Now, particularly this, so I just wanted to highlight on this, that whether pre-COVID-19 or post-COVID-19, those are the very governance kind of issues which need to be addressed at all points of time. But post-COVID-19, there are significant changes which are happening, and I think we need to address them as well. And which is basically, today we have realized that as far as the globalization is concerned, now globalization for last nearly 3 decades, we are talking about globalization. We are talking about world as a one economy. And this whole concept of globalization dominated the world economy for the last 3 decades. But then today what happened? When Prime Minister says that self-reliant India, I think it's a complete inward-looking approach. But then so is the approach as far as the other nations are concerned. For example, the United States of America, they are also getting into inward-looking approach, and so is the many other European countries as well. Now, perhaps, and there are reasons why there is an inward-looking approach. There are pros and cons as far as whole issue is concerned. But this is what post-COVID-19, the impact is too harsh. Impact is too grave and serious that all economies of the world are now inward-looking. Now, in this inward-looking kind of atmosphere, we will have to find out our place, that where we would be placed. Now, if you notice that post 2008 financial crash, now globalization got impacted because trade and foreign investment got stagnated. Now, then thereafter that this China and American trade war and its impact, then this lockdown. Now, these are all leading to an inward-looking approach, and it is estimated that the world goods trade is expected to shrink from 10% to 30%, and perhaps it might go higher as well. So, in this kind of world economy we are living, and there we need to find out our ways. And it's good, fashionable to say that if because of the China America relationship, whether we can capture that market. Believe me, we can't capture that market. We can't capture that market unless we make those systemic changes and governance related changes in the economy. Now, I will just go to a few more points as far as the post COVID-19 situation is concerned. That yes, post COVID-19, apart from the broader issues and macroeconomic issues, it has completely changed. It has completely changed the way in which we work, the way in which we consume, the way in which we travel, and the way in which we interact. Today, as professionals, and believe me, all of us, whether we believe that do we really need offices to function, whether the model work from home model has been so successful because it has increased productivity at a different level. Distraction level is too minimal. Now, in a situation like this, people and organizations are redefining the whole structure. Why to spend money as far as offices are concerned? Why not to save that money? So I'm just giving you an example. That it has post-COVID-19 situation has completely changed our thought process, the way in which we work, the way in which we consume, the way in which we travel, the way in which we interact, and it has gone to the minutest of the level. And perhaps in the times to come, next few months, you will realize, and many of us would be perhaps following those kind of models, whereby we would be cutting down our workforce. We would be more focusing on the work from home so that we can save money on that. And those changes would lead to further changes. One more changes which it has brought is, of course, the use of technology to its optimum level. And I think in the times to come, we would be more tech savvy. And so those are the changes which we are experiencing. But
संजय भैया एक क्वेश्चन है, एक प्रदीप कपूर जी का क्वेश्चन है इसी रेलेवेंस में. क्या wages can be cut say by 30% to 50%, या फिर मतलब will not, या फिर further they want to say कि या तो wages कम होंगे 30% 50%, या फिर आप workforce को कम करेंगे तो फिर unemployment नहीं बढ़ेगी?
So there are two ways of looking at it. This is the same kind of situation, Deepak. For example, when that computer revolution, that 2000 issue came, at that point of time also it was deliberated that it would reduce the workforce and many of these things. But then, believe me, the economy and the people, they keep on redefining their rules and relevance. Now if suppose you are saving money in terms of not taking office space, perhaps you would be encouraging other people also. You would be giving more incentive to people who would be working from home. There can be, the models can be developed. There can be, if we would be thinking on the same lines as we were thinking pre-COVID-19, perhaps the answer would be the similar answer, that this would generate unemployment. This would, have those kind of negative consequences. Yes, in the transition phase, it happens. But then perhaps ultimately we find our own ways, and you keep on developing like this. Now, in a situation like this, the fact remains that the kind of infrastructure growth we are talking about, the kind of scope which we have in the infrastructure, whether we would be needing more workforce or not, answer is definitely yes. Today also we have, from a demographic standpoint, we have 60 crore young people. Now tell me, to the extent you have a huge population which has a capability of demand, supply would automatically happen and the economy would progress. Today, from a global service sourcing standpoint, we are having a 55% market share of global services sourcing. Would that get reduced? Yes. Realignment, redefining would happen, but then the system would continue as it is. Perhaps in the process, we would be more productive, and we would perhaps get more economies of scale. Now, as I said, the globalization per se was the base in terms of using those jurisdictions where you have a competitive products. That was the base. That why to spend something on a product where your cost of production is too high? Why not to source it from outside? But then COVID-19 has taught almost all countries that no, despite the cost of production being low, you cannot afford to have a situation whereby you would be relying on only one supply chain and one jurisdiction. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there can be a transitional period, there might be some impact, but then from an overall impact standpoint, I think it would be a positive impact only. Now, in the whole issue, and also I wanted to highlight again, in the organized sector, as far as the employment part is concerned, that is only the employment which we normally talk about. But then we have a huge ecosystem where we have a huge entrepreneurial base. Now, if you talk about the informal sector, with the informal sector, nearly around 60 crore people in the informal sector. Now, ultimately, they are also earning livelihood, and out of that, if you talk about the basic figures as far as MSME sector is concerned, 7.5 crores kind of people already employed there. Now, these numbers, they are much higher than the population of many countries. Now we have such a huge base, and what we need to do is to gainfully employ this huge population. Now to do this, what is required is, and the focus of the government is also very clear, that reinforced, intensified and redoubled efforts as far as Make in India is concerned. Now inward-looking approach is there in almost all jurisdictions. Gone are those days where WTO was dictating the terms, of the US was dictating the terms that open up the economy completely and all that. Today everybody is becoming inward looking, and nobody is feeling negative about it. Now, so we also need to be focusing more on the Make in India, and the Making India initiative would likely to absorb many of those people who because of those changes also, because post COVID-19 changes also, that would be absorbing those kind of people. And automatically, if the Make in India initiative becomes successful, the services sector would automatically be successful in terms of various kinds of services. Now the manufacturing sector in the Make in India initiative also estimated that it would be creating additional 10 crore jobs. Now if it happens, I think I think we would be achieving our objectives. Now, some of the learnings as far as the whole issue is concerned, post COVID-19 situation. Of course, COVID-19 has not gone, but then still in the last 2 months, the learnings which we have got, and perhaps there we need to be focusing upon, is that the key to success as far as any plan is concerned is the state and district administration. If you notice, state and district administration were successful in one count, but then utterly fail as far as other count is concerned. Successful in terms of enforcing the lockdown. In enforcing the lockdown, state and at such a grand level, in such a short period of time, the kind of maturity which everyone has shown as far as the whole system is concerned, it's indeed praiseworthy. The government has taken action, people supported this, and complete lockdown was effectively enforced. But then where we failed, even from a state and district administration is concerned, in terms of taking care of the migrant labor, we utterly failed wherever the district administration at the local level, panchayat level, etc., they were not particular in terms of doing certain things for those migrant labor. I think we have utterly failure, and this is what the chaos which we are experiencing on a daily basis on the newspaper reports, one or the other incidents. So I think the learning is that if you want to be successful, your state and district level at the lowest level, which is at the panchayat village level, also that need to be very, very effective. So we have both the examples, success as well as failure. The other learning here is that leadership and experience of world powers, they are not relevant. Now, take example, this pandemic was there in almost all jurisdictions. The two world leaders, in a way, the United States and China, their leadership and experience, it was not relevant as far as India is concerned. India has devised its own model. And in fact, if you notice, US has utterly failed in terms of controlling and containing the pandemic, while India has been successful. So leadership, so the other learning is that US and China, or for that matter, European countries, whatever they do, they would always be right. This is not correct. We will have to devise our own way. And this applies to almost all sectors, we should not be blindly following the models which these countries have followed. The third learning here is that we know very little about the science. Science is yet to progress. We are nowhere near in terms of finding a solution as far as this pandemic is concerned. And so what is the key as far as the future is concerned? That yes, prevention of this outbreak in the future is the key. We know very little. So this is also one of the learning. We might boast of so many achievements, but then yes, we know very little about science. Fourth learning is, to my understanding, is that we all know what works, and what works is hygiene. What works is safeguarding yourself. We all know that. This is also a learning, and this would go a long way. And believe me, Deepak, just to highlight that in the hygiene kind of things, where India was to be taking perhaps a couple of generations to learn those kinds of hygiene kind of culture, perhaps this pandemic has taught us in 2 months' time. So this is what one positive side as far as hygiene is concerned. And the other learning is that yes, for future challenges or to face future challenges, we need to develop enough infrastructure in terms of strong governance. Governance in terms of, as I said, the at almost all levels up to the village and panchayat level. Then we need to have a strong and robust healthcare system, and we need to have a great transportation system. Now, economic and governance strength would only be the key as far as attracting investment, as I said earlier. Let me point out here that China's downturn and what we are reading, of course, it's a great opportunity available to us, no doubt about it. But then believe me, we can't avail this opportunity unless we make those systemic changes which I highlighted as far as pre-COVID or post-COVID-19 situation is concerned, particularly from a governance standpoint. I think that would be the key in terms of attracting investment. Some of other learnings are, I think, and which would be culturally, transforming all of us as professionals as well. One is the do-it-yourself kind of culture. Today, we have more respect for labor as well. The people with whom we were, taking for granted, we have more respect for those kind of, workforce as well. We know today the work from home concept, and we admit that work from home is possible. The physical meeting perhaps can be avoided, and we can save costs on that as well. We have also learned in terms of increased dependence on technology, and I think it would go a long way for all of us as professionals, whether lawyers or chartered accountants or company secretaries, and the way in which the court proceedings today are happening, the e-filings are happening. I think it has completely changed our perspective in terms of dealing with issues, and perhaps it might help in the times to come to clear the backlog of cases of around 3.6 crores cases which are pending in the different courts. We have also learned the new standards for safety and hygiene. Undoubtedly, we have also learned the importance of life and family, and we have also learned that human beings are not supreme. One more interesting thing is, that Bhutui coffee, which we used to have, that has taken a new name, Dalgona coffee. So new concepts are getting developed, and new terminologies are being, developed, and they are getting popularity in such a short span of time. Now, the way forward here is, the way in which I look at the way forward is that the first way forward is we need to be finding out a mechanism to prevent COVID-19 kind of outbreak in future. So which is the key, because we have all learned that this would make or mar as far as the economy is concerned. This would never be, or not merely be, a health crisis. These kind of situation may lead to a complete collapse as far as the economy is concerned, and that ultimately that would be impacting the social and economic issues as well, and would be impacting the large population. So we need to have a plan to address the health crisis as well as economic crisis. We need to be more vigorously and have a reinforced focus as far as the Make in India is concerned, and there are all energies should be diverted. And we have all realized that for revival of the economy, MSME sector or the agriculture sector, they would be the key drivers. Transformational changes which we need is how to conduct our businesses. In terms of the supply chain disruption, I think it's an absolutely new learning. How to develop our supply chain base, how to maintain liquidity at all times. And I think these would be, nowhere as far as all our risk management kind of assessment, which we used to do in the last number of years, we have ever thought about pandemic or epidemic of this nature. I myself, as was involved in risk management kind of assessment for the last more than 2 decades. I have never captured this pandemic or epidemic kind of situation, the kind of disruption it would cause. I think these are the new learnings that we need to be preparing ourselves fully, and this is how we as professionals, we need to be capturing as far as whenever we be advising as our clients are concerned. The way forward, to my understanding, is that in this backdrop, and this backdrop is basically a $5 trillion economy objective is still intact. The kind of infrastructure growth which we are talking about is still intact. The kind of opportunities which we are having and the kind of initiatives that the government has taken in terms of various stimulus packages and reform agenda, I think these are very much there. The only thing is this would all lead to enhanced role of professionals. The difficulty here is we as professionals, we are focusing only on one part of the clients, which is basically a corporate clients. We are not focusing on various other sectors, which are huge sectors and which can give us a volume of business. And particularly, I'm right now talking about the MSME sector. And believe me, that MSME sector, they would not be knowing about these various schemes. They would not be knowing about these nitty-gritties of these schemes and various packages, etc. Somebody will have to teach them. Somebody will have to guide them so that they also become part of the whole economic progress. I think what we as chartered accountants or lawyers or company secretaries should be playing our role. We need to be changing our role, and it would be absolutely a transformational change. Basically, we need to be becoming a procedural, from today's procedural orientation to we should be becoming a business orientation, and we should be advising our businesses, or we should be advising those sectors accordingly. And I think this is what would be the way forward. Personally, I think that we all professional last 2 months, the kind of discussions, deliberations, webinars, etc., which happen, and people have participated wholeheartedly. I think the public opinion is getting framed that how the professionals would be giving benefits to various sectors and how the economy can progress with their contribution. Now, with these words, I just wanted to conclude on this. Thank you very much for patiently listening to me. I'm open for any question on the whole presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Nitin Kawar, Deepak, and the knowledge platform as well. Thank you very much.
संजीव जी सर, एक्चुअली वंडरफुल रिविजन, और इतनी लिमिटेशन के बाद कि सर आप यू नॉट विजुअल और आपका बेसिकली हम पीपीटी भी शेयर नहीं कर पा रहे. और सर मैं आपको एक बात बता दूं, आपको आई जस्ट चेक्ड इट फ्रॉम जूम सर, इट इज 3 बजे के बाद हर जगह प्रॉब्लम आ रही है. 3 बजे के बाद हर जूम में जहां कई जगह, हम तो फॉर्चुनेटली एनफ कि हम तो मतलब स्टार्ट भी कर पाए, कई लोगों को सेशन भी स्टार्ट नहीं हुआ. सम टेक्निकल ग्लिचेस केम इन जूम, ग्लिचेस आ गए, तो आई एम वेरी सॉरी अबाउट इट.
नो प्रॉब्लम.
Over the subject very fully. Deepa bhai, you want to ask some question?
Yes, thank you so much, Sanjeev sir. And Nitin ji, I have received certain questions on my WhatsApp actually.
Right,
I think the chat box of this Zoom is also not working. So
Yes, sir.
I've been receiving a lot of questions on my WhatsApp actually.
Right, sir.
This is Sanjeev sir. I think deliberation was very inclusive. These are the observations which I think the audience has made. So one observation I think you can comment upon that despite the fact that ease of doing business in India has been phenomenal, and government has to look forward, despite of negative growth rate in many sectors, the most progressive sector like coal and defense manufacturing, as education, MSME, collateral-free loan are some of the positive signs which definitely, as a professional, we should disseminate information. In your last version, you rightly corrected in a corrective way that we as a profession should definitely reach out to those who require this education. So this has been just submitted by Mr. Lalit. In fact, it needs not to be an observation from the audience, right? Now the question is, Sanjeev sir, from you actually, that as a corporate, because you have been having a lot of corporate, you have been on the top, you have been the KMP, you are holding the director position. So as a corporate, how do you see this challenge actually, apart from the economic challenge, just for the 1 year or 2 years down the line from now? Mr. Sanjeev is asked.
Yeah, the fact is, and the reality is, the future is uncertain. The future is uncertain. So this is what the immediate response can be. But then let me tell you that today most of the industries are functioning. Now our plants are also functioning. So everybody is contributing in their own way. Now, there would be absolutely, as far as this financial year is concerned, there would be impact as far as the demand and supply is concerned. So perhaps that can be one situation as far as this year is concerned. But then, since our fundamentals are so strong, these would be aberrations. At times, certain aberrations are taking a short period of time. Certain aberrations are taking slightly more period of time. And perhaps this would be the other kind of aberrations where this would take perhaps not a 2 months or 6 months, perhaps a year's time. But since the fundamentals are strong, and believe me, the kind of initiatives which the government has also taken in terms of initiating the reform agenda, I think we would be on the right track and right path. And I'm still hopeful that we would achieve our objective of $5 trillion economy. Yes. No reason why we can't achieve that.
Sanjeev, the second question is that we were not inward looking. Was it against us?
Not really, because in a globalized kind of environment, what we have learned last 3 decades, if you notice, in a regulated regime before 1991, we were under regulated regime. We were more inward-looking kind of jurisdiction. Post 1991, the kind of prosperity which we have got because of the liberalization, I think that itself is an example that inward-looking would not be the best solution. But having said so, we need to be self-reliant as far as certain sectors are concerned. And self-reliance is indeed, necessary. We should not be dependent on one jurisdiction. For example, today the way in which the United States is suffering because they were more dependent on the imports from China. Today, this is not the situation as far as India is concerned. India is neither dependent largely on the imports from other jurisdictions, or India's economy is not largely based on exports. So basically we have a huge domestic market also. So if you ask me, that inward looking approach per se is not bad, but at the same time, the way in which India progressed perhaps at the right time, we opened up the economy. We got the kind of technology and funding which you need to progress your economy. That was not possible if we become an inward looking only. So I think from that perspective, we followed the right path. Yes, self-reliance is needed, but then I don't think the way in which the sectors have been opened up. You just take example. One is we are saying we should be self-reliant, but at the same time, we are opening up the sector for defense with 74% equity under automatic route. So that itself conveys that yes, focus is inward looking, more and more manufacturing in India, but at the same time, in certain sectors, wherever we need technology, wherever we need funding, we should be open up. And so it is what the mixed model which India is following, and perhaps rightly so.
दीपक भैया, संजीव भैया, आई बिलीव जो दीपक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते थे उनका मुझे लगता है जो राइट पर्सपेक्टिव ही है कि व्हाट यू वांट टू से कि द इंडिया विल बी मोर कंसंट्रेटिंग ऑन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इन इंडिया. अब पोर्ट पे वो ज्यादा से ज्यादा वो बोलेगा, ज्यादा सा कर्व लगाएगा कि ठीक है मुझे जो चीज जरूरत है वही मैं इंपोर्ट करूंगा. एल्स इधर अगर आपको कुछ बनाना है, कुछ बेचना है, come and manufacture in India and उसके बाद सेल करना शुरू करो. I will not allow imports, something like this. अगर कहीं पे चीज बनती नहीं है तो बात अलग है. Otherwise, there will be curb on imports also. Yes, there could be a negative impact also कि हमारे एक्सपोर्ट पे भी दिक्कत आएगी. पर मुझे लगता है इंडिया का सेल्फ रिलायंट का मंत्रा भी यही है. और आप देखोगे जब 200 करोड़ पे जब ये बोल रहे हैं कि भैया ग्लोबल टेंडर नहीं होंगे, इनका टारगेट क्या है कि डोंट डू बिजनेस विद इंडिया, डू बिजनेस इन इंडिया.
यस यस बट नितिन जी, एक बात बताऊं मैं आपको, ये बात तो सही है, मेक इन इंडिया वुड बी द मंत्रा, द वे इन विच द लिमिट्स हैव बीन फिक्स्ड, बट देन लुक इन अ लॉन्गर रन, ultimately what works is your economies of scale. Now in a situation where the cost of production is too high as far as Indian jurisdiction is concerned, and you can't match those kind of costs, would you be wasting your time in terms of manufacturing in India only for the sake of manufacturing in India or make in India? Perhaps answer is no. So it would largely be dependent ultimately on the economies of scale and also the demand and supply situation, and of course the kind of jurisdiction which we are talking about. Of course it sounds good, as of today, that yes, we would be focusing more and more on those sectors, but the fact is, as I again said, that who would be coming forward? The fact is 200 crores investment, of course, Indian manufacturers, but then how many entrepreneurs are there in the system today? We are struggling with that as well. So unless you have a base to initiate and do that, it's very difficult at times. So we will have to see how it ultimately gets unfolded.
Very good. नितिन भैया, एक प्रोफेशनल ग्रुप ने एक क्वेश्चन शेयर किया है. Sanjeev sir, they have shared the steps which FM has taken today with regard to various important announcement under the compliance burden reduction actually. As a Atmanirbhar scheme. So they want to ask Sanjeev sir whether it is as actually like IBC related debts related to COVID are out of IBC now. No new IBC can be initiated for another 1 year. Special insolvency framework has been just out for MSMEs. Minimum limit of IBC now would be ₹1 crore. Decriminalization of all the sections and few non-compoundable offences now would become compoundable offences, and compounding and adjudication by the ROC in all respects, direct listing in foreign destination directly, blah blah. So they want to just ask whether these steps are welcoming steps as far as a professional we are concerned.
Well, two things attached to this. If you notice, as far as, I'm right now not on professional, as far as industry is concerned, let's comment on this. As I said in my presentation also, there are systemic issues as far as the governance part is concerned. Now, in all these issues, there were unnecessary compliance requirement at times. Now, there are prosecutions with regard to those petty kind of offenses also, and the non-compliances also. Now, whether they should be removed, answer is yes. Now, if suppose the limits has been increased for MSME sector, it's a true reflection that today you can't afford to have a IBC initiated for those very organizations which you need in terms of the economic revival or economic growth. Now so basically what the government is intending is, and perhaps rightly so, that let the entrepreneur and the business houses be busy in their business and entrepreneur kind of activities, rather than keeping them busy in those compliances kind of issues, so that rather than contributing to the economic growth, they would be busy in doing all those litigations and those compliance related issues. So I think from that perspective, these are very, very good initiatives. Now, if you ask me that whether that would be good for professional, well, my answer would be that if there can be a short-term impact, that those very cases where you were filing IBC cases, etc., those cases would not be there. But then you would be, as I said in my presentation, that rather than being a procedural thing, please educate those MSME sector in terms of various schemes. You would be redefining your role in terms of more business orientation as far as your consulting is concerned, rather than those compliance and litigation kind of advisory. So you would be redefining your role. So I think ultimately this would be a productive kind of situation for both professionals as well as for businesses. And this is what I think government has taken rightly in terms of right steps at the right time, that let entrepreneurs be respected and let them do their work in terms of economic development and growth, rather than keeping them busy in terms of these one or the other issues.
Great. Sanjeev sir, last question from my side only. The data shows that 44% recovery has been achieved since inception of insolvency and bankruptcy code. This is the data actually. And in fact, FM also made sure that the industries do not suffer, and especially MSME sector do not suffer. And at the other end also, you look at the G20 major economies meeting actually, which was held in March 26th, where our Prime Minister also participated from distance. So these major economies committed to provide on to inject over 5 trillion US dollars to support economies, protect workers and businesses, especially micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Will it affect in any way in future? Because we have to be concerned about the trade balance also, right? Because that is a bilateral arrangements, multilateral arrangement with other countries. So how do you see actually? Why? Because you have been taking care of the global acquisitions and all various level actually. So what do you say about it?
No, so your question is basically in terms of, can
trade
you...
balance.
One is trade balance, basically, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, look, the fact remains. The fact remains that India is a huge market. It's a huge market of a billion customers. So everybody, there can be a short-term, issues always. But then in the long run, nobody can ignore this Indian market. So everybody would be interested as far as their presence in the Indian market is concerned, because nobody can ignore a billion customer. Now, in the process, forget about the short-term aberrations. Ultimately, world would be a globalized world. Inward-looking approach can be a time, a short-term kind of approach. And when you become a globalized world, you will always be adjusting your economies depending upon your benefits and the cost of economies of scale. I think so. So I don't think that from a trade balance standpoint, it would be impacting much as far as almost all sectors are concerned. Now, the fact is to have a quantum jump as far as the economy is concerned, you have no other option but to attract investment and attract technology. And both these things cannot happen from domestic sources, and that is what our limitation is, and that is the reason why we would be dependent. Now, with that kind of investment, attracting of investment, perhaps economy would get into a different shape, and we would be in a better off position as far as even balance of payment position is concerned.
Great. Nitin sir, with your permission, एक क्वेश्चन अभी हिट हुआ है जिसको मैं लास्ट में पूछना चाहूंगा. One professional is asking, is it once in a lifetime opportunity for the MSMEs to make them self-sustainable and self-reliant? This is the fact that this is concerned.
Well, I don't think that this is the one and the last opportunity kind of situation. I think these are the immediate, measures which the government has taken to reinitiate this. You never know how the economy would, get unfolded, and what kind of benefits you would be getting in future. But now, if you ask me that, yes, these are the immediate benefits which the government has given in terms of initiating your business. So I don't think that this is a lifetime kind of opportunity, that you will never be getting those kind of opportunities in future. I think economies would take their own shape. And the governments also take their actions and decisions accordingly, depending upon the circumstances.
So GBA, since you are heading such a big organization, Dalmia Bharat, right, and you have been associated with big companies now. So I just want to know, what is the perception? You might have done Zoom meeting with your counterparts and other CEOs of other different companies. You might have talked to. What is the outlook of all those people about Indian prospects and as to development and as to this COVID-19?
Well, let me say that yes, there is a fear, because uncertainty is too huge. We are not too sure in terms of how we would be in a normal position and to what extent we would be accepting the normalcy. Now, if we accept the normalcy as early as possible and we get into our day-to-day life and working, perhaps the things would change. So right now there is an apprehension that to what extent and till what time this whole situation would continue. Now, if the situation continues for another 3 months, 4 months, 5 months like this, then we are in a severe kind of situation. But if we get into normalcy, and which appears to us that in the next 15, 20, 30 days time, we would perhaps be in a more like a normalcy kind of situation. Then in that situation, if suppose we get into a 1% or 2% kind of GDP also, I think it would be a great achievement, I would say, because no other country would be achieving that level of GDP. But then as far as the fundamentals are concerned, everybody is clear that except a few sectors where there would be effect and impact would be harsh and slightly long lasting, would be certain sectors, particularly say real estate sectors or the automobile sectors. These kind of sectors would perhaps have a slightly longer time horizon, but then otherwise, as far as the core sector is concerned, the people are positive about it, because the whole focus today is on the infrastructure side. And on the infrastructure side, if we are spending that level of money, $1.4 trillion of money, I think all core sector industries would progress very well. And this would perhaps impact a push factor as far as the other sectors are concerned. So people are otherwise positive about it, but people are waiting that let us see how it unfolds.
So what I want to say, basically the apprehension is about demand. See, प्रोडक्शन में कहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, यू कैन मैनेज, इंडस्ट्री किसी ना किसी से मैनेज कर लेगा, सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग भी कर लेगा. इशू ये है कि वो डिमांड कैसे रेज होगी, वो जो आप डिमांड कह रहे हैं, जैसे रियल एस्टेट में दिक्कत आएगी, ऑटो में दिक्कत आएगी, मुझे तो लाइफस्टाइल रिलेटेड कोई भी चीज होगी सब में दिक्कत नजर आती आ रही है. जैसे आज हमने सुबह ही बात कर रहे हैं, दीपक जी ऑल्सो दे, तो मेरे को लग रहा था कि मैंने कहा यार मैं कपड़े भी परचेज करूंगा नहीं करूंगा, मैं शूज परचेज करूंगा भी नहीं करूंगा, क्यों करूंगा, रादर if I'm going in sleepers in my office, who is going to look into? और अगर मैं घर पे ही बैठा हूँ तो मैं स्लीपर्स में भी काम कर रहा हूँ, वर्क फ्रॉम होम कर रहा हूँ, तो फिर कौन देख रहा है मुझे? आर यू गेटिंग पॉइंट? तो इस तरह का जो डिमांड कैसे क्रिएट होगा, मैं डिमांड का, क्योंकि जब तक डिमांड नहीं होगी, इवन यू प्रोडक्शन कर दें आप, कि जो इम्पेटस दिया जा रहा है, जो भी दिया जा रहा है, जो गवर्नमेंट कर रही है अपने साथ बहुत अच्छा कर रही है, इसके अलावा कुछ कर नहीं सकती है. तो मुझे लग रहा है वो डिमांड कैसे क्रिएट होगी, डिमांड इज द की. कि हमारे कोई सेमिनार होता है, कोई फंक्शन होता है, तभी तो आप प्लान करते हो, यार मैंने कल ये पहना था, let us have a new shoes, मैं नए कपड़े पहनूंगा, something like this, whatever you do, right? तो इस तरह की चीजें, वो डिमांड कैसे क्रिएट होगी?
अब देखिए नितिन, ये आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है. मतलब दिस इज व्हाट द विशियस साइकिल इज, कि अनलेस यू क्रिएट डिमांड यू विल नॉट बी गेटिंग इनटू सप्लाई, एंड सो दिस विशियस साइकिल वुड बी देयर. एंड टुडे देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. बट देन इफ यू नोटिस that the government has taken initiatives on two major sectors. They have taken multiple initiatives in terms of creating liquidity at the workforce level as well as at the agricultural level. Now, the two things which would be play if the monsoon goes well and if the agriculture sector goes well, there would be a demand as far as the villages are concerned. That would be a major push. The only thing as far as the manufacturing sector is concerned, it's a major hurdle would be a workforce, because workforce today, which has already gone to the villages and towns and those their respective states, if they don't return back, say beyond Diwali also, there would be an impact in the manufacturing sector. So that demand would be impacted badly. So this 1 year, I agree with you that for 1 year, unless these things get stabilized, demand would be a major issue. And you are right that impact certain sectors, of course, say agriculture sector ho gaya, demand hui, villages mein hui, but then that has its own consequences, only a limited extent in certain sectors. But then largely, unless the economy goes into that path, and unless we reach into 5 to 6% kind of growth, I think it would be a challenge in terms of creation of demand. The only thing is, we will have to give a 2 years horizon, that infrastructure funding and the execution of projects, if they get prime importance, and if they get executed on a timely basis, perhaps that would be a big push as far as demand in other sectors are concerned.
भैया ऐसा कुछ और you want to discuss anything more?
Yes, thank you so much. Any words from Sanjeev bhaiya? Any final words?
एक मिनट दीपक भैया, if somebody can ask the question, they can raise their hand. I will unmute any person, any participants, any attendees. If somebody want to ask question, what's up?
Technically, he was just disconnected, but he's there actually. Also.
No issues, sir. No issues. Sir, Deepaji, yes, you continue, please, sir. Sorry.
Yes, Sanjeev sir, any final words as a professional? Just because day before yesterday we were discussing with Mr. Sudhakar also, who was having this legal and compliance rule of the Reliance Industries Limited. So he was also of the opinion that the way we have been conducted our respective audits and all, that will definitely change the shape. So as a professional, I think as a big corporation, you must be handling that way. But as far as the MSME and some professionals like us are concerned, any mantra for them actually from your side?
My suggestion, Deepak, would be very simple, and I think that we as professionals, we should become part of their business orientation. We should rather than a advisory and compliance kind of role, which we are of course effectively playing as professionals, whether as chartered accountant or otherwise. I think we should become part of their business, and we should be giving them a business oriented solutions and become make them knowledgeable as far as various governmental schemes are concerned, or various business issues are concerned. I think that would be a major transformation as far as our role is concerned, and this is what would be required in the times to come. So I think my suggestion would be that let us as professionals become a business oriented solution provider, and create more awareness as far as various sectors are concerned, and particularly MSME sector.
Yes. So really over to you, Nitin sir. Any final words from you?
Ji, thanks a lot. Subject to limitations, you have done wonderfully well. बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है, मुझे भी लगता है कि जैसे आप किसी को देख नहीं पा रहे हो, कोई आपको नहीं देख पा रहा है, और आप पीपीटी भी शेयर नहीं कर रहे हो, उसके बावजूद you have done a wonderful deliberation. I'm still saying sorry, apologies that due to technical glitches something has been awful, but it is not in our hand. और ये Zoom में हर जगह हुआ है 3 बजे के बाद. I just checked it out, and with these words, thanks a lot. और आने वाले टाइम में संजीव भैया मैं आपको दोबारा तंग करूंगा, और आपके हिसाब से टाइम लेके सब्जेक्ट लेके उस हिसाब से हम जरूर दोबारा सुनना चाहेंगे, और विद ताकि लिमिटेशंस के बावजूद हम आपको देख भी पाए इस हिसाब से. With these words, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And of course, undoubtedly, it was my privilege and pleasure to be here. Of course, as you rightly pointed out, technology की problem थी, but then this is what in the times to come, use of technology जो है, dependence तो बढ़ रही है, but then वो services भी हम expect करेंगे कि बेहतरीन होती जाए. And wish you all the very best for all your future programs. I really enjoyed it, and look forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nitin ji. Thank you, Deepak. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all audience who have been participating from the videos. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.